here at the Parliament of the World's Religions in Toronto, Canada, and I'm here with my friend Matthew Fox. Priest, author, scholar, theologian, rebel, mystic, what else? An activist, yes. Matthew is known as the father or the creator of something called creation spirituality. And you wrote Original Blessing, which really kind of first articulated this idea, this philosophy, when? How long ago?
Came out in 1983.
1983.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
but
how many
before that,
years?
I had written a book that laid out the difference between fall redemption religion and creation-centered religion.
Yeah.
That was in my book on prayer. I called it Becoming a Musical Mystical Bear.
That's right.
And,
So you've been doing this quite a few years?
Yeah, my whole adult life.
Your
because
entire adult life.
When I studied in Paris, my mentor, Père Chanou, he named the creation spirituality for me. And I knew at the time this was an answer for an unhealthy religion.
Right.
Religion that was too anthropocentric and started with original sin instead of original blessing. So I owe Père Chanou a lot in this movement. He was the grandfather.
Yeah. So we've been at the booth promoting creation spirituality, talking a little bit about what the four paths are, right? The positive and negative, a creative, a transformative, and talking about the communities in the world that use these teachings in their practice and in their ritual to build their community and keep their communities cohesive and active and vibrant and alive. So we all at the booth this week have had our elevator pitch, our 1 minute version of what is creation spirituality when somebody asks us what it is. So I want to turn this to you. What is your 1 minute elevator pitch for creation spirituality, and why is it important? Why is it relevant today?
Well, creation spirituality begins obviously with creation, which is all of nature, the whole universe. The way Genesis 1 begins, with the universe, not with humankind. And we came very late, 13.8 billion years late. But all those steps in those unfoldings of the universe were necessary for our Earth, our sun, our moon, all the wonderful plants and animals we share the Earth with, and for us to arrive. So it's all a very great blessing. It's a marvel, which is another word for miracle. The real meaning of miracle is marvel. And so it's a tradition of gratitude, of praise, of thanks, the via positiva, for being here. That's how religion should begin. Rabbi Heschel says, praise precedes faith. So first you have to learn to be grateful before we set up parameters and doctrines and things. So creation spirituality is actually the tradition of Jesus. Historical Jesus comes from the wisdom tradition of Israel, which is about finding God in nature. The Bible of nature, the book of nature, not just the Bible book. And this comes through, of course, in Jesus' teachings, all of his parables that bring in the animals and the plants and the mustard seeds and the rest. It's the oldest tradition in the Bible. The J source in Genesis is creation-centered. And it is a tradition of the prophets, and certainly the wisdom literature is all creation-centered. So this is the best stuff the Bible has to offer. And it relates to pre-Christian traditions because it's indigenous. Indigenous traditions, which of course have been our religion for 95% of our time on earth as a human species, they are creation-centered. They find the divine and they find spirit in nature's processes and presence and breath and all the rest. So for an ecological moment of collapse that we're now in, the UN says we have 12 years left to change our ways. Nothing could be more relevant, if you will, than creation spirituality, because it is spirituality that gets people to change quickly and change deeply by moving the heart. Jesus called it metanoia, a change of consciousness, a fast and deep change of consciousness. And it's not enough to have intellectuals telling us how bad the trouble is in the earth. Information is important, but more important is what we're going to do about it. And for that, we've got to be transformed, and that's what spirituality does. And creation spirituality has the appropriate vision and context, which is to begin with creation, not with our particular traditions. We can bring them to the table, But let's begin with the glory of nature, and which is grace, as Meister Eckhart said. The great mystics that I've been working on recovering for 40 years, Meister Eckhart, Hildegard of Bingen, Thomas Aquinas, Julian Norris, Nicholas Acusa, and others, they begin with a cosmology, not psychology. As Pope Francis says, it's narcissistic to begin with psychology. Well, he doesn't exactly say that, but he uses the word narcissistic. I'm saying to begin with, the human is narcissistic, and look where it's gotten us.
Right.
The earth is dying all around us.
So my second question is, there are
That
communities...
wasn't 1 minute, was it?
That was much longer than 1 minute, but that's okay.
Sorry
You get a
about
pass.
Okay.
There are communities all around the world, from Ruach right here in Toronto to Ukiah in California to Worship Jam in Ohio, Pittsburgh, to our community, Integral Church in St. Petersburg, Florida, that are using creation spirituality as the foundation of worship and service and community building. What is your relationship like? Because I know you're not some kind of pope. It's not a hierarchical, you're not the pope or father figure to these communities. What is your relationship like with those creation spirituality communities? And if you could tell them all one thing here today, what would that thing be?
Well, the one thing I would tell them is to go deep. To go deep. Meister Eckhart says, look at what is in you. Announce it, pronounce it, produce it, and give birth to it. But that first sentence, look at what is in you, you have to go deep. As he says, God is the innermost, in the innermost region of our soul, the spark of our soul. So you have to go deep, and you can't be playing around, dancing around, being cute at the surface of things. You got to go deep. You got to find the grief that's there, and you've got to find the joy that's there. And out of that, you give the birth, the via creativa. You birth things, and you do the work for justice and healing and transforming. So one word, it's about depth. And some people, you know, they hear a new version of the tradition, and they get all excited at first. But then they stop at kind of first base.
Right.
And that won't do in the present context. We all have to go deep to meet this deadline of 12 years that our species has, to try to turn things around enough that the planet as we know it can not only survive but thrive.
Excellent. And probably more importantly, what would your advice be to a community starting up, just forming outside the institutions of religion, somebody forming a house church? Or if you could speak to me 6 years ago when I was first doing circles in the park, what would you say?
Well, first of all, I'll say now, as I would have said then, but even more now, thank you. Thanks for your generosity. It takes generosity, and generosity is one of the major virtues required for today. I think there are two virtues that are really required today: courage and generosity. And it's like Eckhart taught, you know, you have to work without a why. You know, you can't just be interested in how many show up or you know, how much money comes in the plate or something. You know, you've got to really believe in what you're doing, and then you put it out there. And it's like Jesus said, you wish peace on a house. If the blessing doesn't return, you shake the dust from your feet. So you do what you can do, but of course also you want to link up with other groups and in this time. And I think now with this UN report, that I think a lot of people are rattled, and they're looking for people to connect with and to network with. I think finally people are beginning to realize that the sacred creation is the starting point, primary sacrament of everything else humans do, including our religions. And that's what's binding us together now, that sacred creation is in jeopardy because of our species. And of course, often because of churches that have ignored that dimension, but also our education has. I mean, our entire educational system is totally anthropocentric and essentially without values, because it's all left brain. Values that Einstein says come from intuition, the right hemisphere of the brain. the mysticism, really. So that's why spirituality and science have to meet up, because we need the values as well as the information. But we need the heart, we need the body. So that's why dancing is a primary way to pray. It goes, again, our ancient ancestors prayed that way. They don't bring books to a Sundance or to a sweat lodge. And you pray from your heart, not from your eyes. As Wilke said years ago, the work of the eyes is finished now. Go and do heart work on all the images that are repressed inside of you. So it is that via creativa, art is meditation, which includes ritual and dance and the rest, that will awaken many to their spiritual calling.
Thank you. One more question, and it's something that you and I talked about last night, and you've touched on it again this morning, and that is about ritual. Last night you said to me, ritual cannot be soft, it cannot be cute. Ritual has to push you, has to move you. It is a way to connect with the sacred masculine, and that women need to connect or reconnect with the sacred masculine as well. What is the importance of ritual today, especially for young men trying to come up in this world in the environment and social climate we're in today?
Well, it's essential. You know, Robert Bly, in his men's movement, said that ritual is the only way that men learn. And if you exegete that, that kind of explains a lot why there's so many dumb men walking around running things on the world and the planet today, because they haven't had ritual. So they're operating exclusively out of their anthropocentric worldview. Because ritual, as Otto Rank teaches, the essence of all ritual is bringing microcosm and macrocosm together, psyche and cosmos. Think of Stonehenge. I mean, why did they drag rocks for miles that weighed tons before pickup trucks? Because of ritual. They created this thing for the solstice, for a relationship between the human story and the universe story. So men are only going to wake up and be regenerated through that kind of ritual. Now, my book on the hidden spirituality of men, I think, is a very important book, because I don't know anyone else who's approached the men's issue this way, and yet it's clear to anyone who reads the papers that men are in trouble today, especially young men. And you know, a Native American who works in prisons told me, he'd been working for 12 years, that he couldn't find a book that would get men to look inside. Mine was the first that got them to look inside and find the nobility inside. That's what's missing with men. Because when the mechanistic universe, and this was science's sin, science has a shadow too, for all, when it taught the universe was the Father Sky was dead, men shrunk their souls to fit into this shrunken place. And then, of course, they were called into the army, they were called into the Industrial Revolution.
Or gangs.
Gangs, well, gangs
sure,
today,
sure.
but back then it was mining, dangerous jobs, and of course the assembly line was as boring as hell. Yeah. And I mean, all these things are this abuse of the male soul. Yeah. And Robert Bly points out that men suffer more at work than they do from any bad relationships they have. So I think it's very important that men be part of this movement, and women are way ahead of men. They just are. You can see it in the church, especially the Catholic Church. But my point is, men have to start catching up with the women, and women have to kind of lean back and say, hey, let's bring the men along with us. Right. The men have to do their inner work. Yeah. And that includes ritual, as you say. And as I say, what I love about Lakota prayer, which has blessed me considerably over the years, is that there's this masculine dimension to it. It's a challenge, it's an adventure. My first time in a sweat lodge, I remember, I thought I was going to die there. Yeah. For the first 20 minutes, I was looking for a fire exit, and there wasn't one. Right. Then I was looking for a fire extinguisher, there wasn't one. Right. Then I yielded to the experience, and that's when you go to another level, and that's what ritual should do, take us to another level. Yeah. Do I have time for a little story? Sure. Years ago, when I was in Chicago, it's over 35 years ago, I was friends with a young African-American theologian, and he was talking one day about ritual and worship. And he said, I think 95% of all worship in white churches is dead. And this was 25 or 30 years ago. And I said, well, how do you define dead worship? He said, dead worship is where you walk in Sunday morning and you walk out the same person. And I said, well, I disagree with you. I think it's 98% dead worship is dead.
Right.
So that's where the cosmic mass that I've worked on
Yeah.
ever since becoming an Episcopal priest. I think it's very important, like we did here at Parliament. 500 people from all traditions were there, and I've been running into them for 2 days afterwards. Everyone tells me that it was just so healing for them, so important. Some people say, I don't have words for it,
Yeah.
but it was the most powerful experience of my life, they say. I mean, we have so underestimated ritual in the modern era, because the modern era was all about humans. Ritual is not about humans.
Right.
It's about humans' relationship to the cosmos, psyche and cosmos mending again. When religion and science split in the year 1600, we lost the real meaning of ritual. And it became reading and being read to and being preached at and singing, which isn't a bad thing. But even singing has your eyes occupied, you know, to get the right page. So we have to move beyond that, bring all the chakras into worship.
Right. Rise again transformed.
There you go.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you. Thanks for your
Look forward to the
questions
rest of the day.
and for the work you're doing.
Always humbled.
I'm-
Always appreciate every minute I get to spend with you.
Well, I appreciate young leaders who have the generosity and the courage to step up at these dark times to make things happen, and to hang out with some elders too,
Right.
who can assist.
Thanks, man.